2023 gave us one of the best years in gaming ever, with games like Spider-Man 2 and Baldur's Gate 3. Even games like Hi-Fi Rush and Street Fighter 6 were amazing. And then to top of the year, PlayStation gave us the PS Portal, a device that was made to increase engagement with the PS5. And yes, indeed, at least in my case, this device has increased the amount of times that I spend playing my PS5 games drastically. But as they say, all good things must come to an end. And so we move our thoughts forward to the year of 2024. So this is my top 5 most important games of 2024. One quick note. Most important doesn't mean most hyped or even best game, but rather it means the game that I think is most important to the developers that are creating the game and the gaming industry as a whole. And so with that, let's get started. It's fair to say that Microsoft had a forgettable 2023. Between the leaked documents showing that Microsoft is willing to shut down Xbox if Game Pass doesn't make a profit, and the debacle with Redfall, Xbox just simply did not mount any offensive against the arrival of PS5 and the ancient Nintendo Switch. But still, the momentum is actually building around Xbox, and the promises that Phil Spencer made to gamers seems pretty close to getting fulfilled. And one of those promises happens to be my number 5 game choice for Xbox, which is Hellblade 2. This game has been in development for quite some time, and a 2024 release date would be the perfect morale boost for Xbox owners. And this would be a much needed morale boost because it's pretty clear that some media personnel have adopted the stance that other people in the industry simply have a bias against Xbox, with Xbox yet again not getting a nomination in any major categories for the Game Awards. Every indication thus far actually suggests that Hellblade 2 might be the game that turns this around, because remember, Hellblade 1 was a very well received game, and with just a little more tweaking and a little more graphical fidelity and perhaps a bit more in-depth story, Hellblade 2 might just be the game that brings Xbox back to the top of the gaming world. But to be clear though, many gamers are worried about what Phil Spencer has been saying about Xbox, claiming that because they've lost the biggest generation not to lose, their chances of competing with Sony on the console level is pretty much over. Many people are taking this to mean that Phil Spencer is not going to do whatever it takes to bring Xbox back in proper competition with the PS5. Plus the recent news that Microsoft is trying to put Game Pass on everything possible, including the arrivals, does make a lot of Xbox owners a little bit nervous that the future might not be as bright. So let's hope that Hellblade, along with other games that Xbox is slated to release in 2024, will mitigate some of those concerns and show the fan base that yes, Xbox is ready to compete, and yes, Xbox is not going to abandon the console. WB Games, with the release of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, is a logical game to put on this list. However, I am working on an episode specifically focused on live service games, and when I do that coming soon, I'm gonna put them on this list. So with my number 4, I'm actually gonna go with Final Fantasy Rebirth. Square Enix is one of the giants of the gaming industry, but over the past couple of years, gamers have been worried with some of the decisions that the company has been making, such as selling off their entire Western division for a lowballed price. And it doesn't help that some of the recent releases by the company have not lived up to the hype. Even some of their best releases, such as FF16, has an asterisk with it because apparently Square Enix was disappointed with sales numbers. But great news for Square Enix that their next game is a game that is guaranteed to do numbers, and that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. With the first game, Remake, Square Enix showed that they can revitalize one of their biggest IPs ever. And Final Fantasy VII Remake went on to be a smashing success, winning a lot of awards. With Rebirth, every single indication right now suggests that that game is going to be bigger, better, and most likely generate more revenue than the prior game. And it really helps that it's coming in February after the holidays, where the PS5 is slated to sell even more units, meaning that Final Fantasy Rebirth could not be in a better spot to bring Square Enix back to the top of their game. Yes, I know that you've been waiting patiently for the number 3 and the number 2 on my list, but before I get to that, please consider hitting that like button so you can help me hit 1,000 followers. I'm gonna guess that you are expecting a Nintendo game to be on this list, since the rumored Nintendo Switch 2 is likely to come by holiday season 24. And on that point, you are correct. But keep in mind, everything we've heard about the Switch 2 are only rumors, and we don't have any games attached to the console yet. That being said though, for their next console, Nintendo needs the console to look more like the Switch and the Wii and not like the Wii U. And to achieve this, I believe Nintendo will go back to Zelda. And yes, I mean Tears of the Kingdom and a possible DLC. I know you're a little bit surprised by this, but hear me out real quick. Nintendo needs their next console to make a big splash, and there was no better performing game on the Switch than the Zelda games, of which they released 2 of them, and both of them went on to perform better than any other Nintendo game of the Switch generation. What I say next might be considered gaming blasphemy, but I think right now Zelda is a bigger IP than Mario. Look, yes, I'm shocked myself saying that, but honestly, look at the facts. The past 2 mainline Zelda games have sold a combined 50 million plus units. And because of their success, Nintendo has already announced that a live-action Zelda movie is coming, which means that Nintendo understands that right now, Zelda is such a demanded IP that I know they will not waste this chance. And lastly, remember, Breath of the Wild was originally released on the Nintendo Wii U, and a re-release with the DLC just came with the Switch, and it was a smashing success. So with that logic in mind, I believe for the next Nintendo system, a Zelda game is all but guaranteed. And keep in mind, Tears of the Kingdom came with some brand new mechanics that I believe Nintendo will try and capitalize on, just like they did with the Mario mechanics in Mario Maker. So then just imagine a Tears of the Kingdom DLC game with a particular focus on those mechanics to do really cool things, much like Minecraft or Roblox. And if you think that's crazy, my number 2 game isn't any less crazy. By now you probably figured that my number 2 or number 1 game is going to have something to do with Sony. And yes, you will be correct once more, because yes, my number 2 game does in fact have something to do with Sony. But here, I might have to disappoint you a bit, because no, it is not Wolverine, because I do not think Wolverine will release in 2024, but there is one major thing that we know about Sony, which is some of their initiatives, and that's where I'm going with my number 2 game, which is Stellar Blade. Yes, Stellar Blade is a game that we don't know a lot about, but we do know enough to know that this game could potentially be something great, because once again, Sony has done something that they rarely do, and when they do it, tends to work out very well for them. Remember the game Returnal? Before that game was released, Sony bought the studio who made that game, Housemarque, and that game would go on to be an absolutely fantastic game for them. Surprisingly, Sony did the same thing again with the developers of Stellar Blade. Last week, Sony announced a full partnership with the developers of Stellar Blade, which means that they are now a second-party developer to PlayStation. This partnership with the developers of Stellar Blade tells me there is something about this game that Sony really likes. Whatever PlayStation leadership see in this game, they like it enough to lock the developers down with a full partnership. And this is a really good sign for PlayStation gamers, because again, remember, PlayStation is really good at this. In fact, some can argue that this is their bread and butter. So yes, I know that you will have preferred if I put a game like Wolverine on this list, or even Rise of the Ronin, but something about Stellar Blade tells me this might be something special. And the partnerships that Sony is making in the South Korean companies tells me that we might be seeing some pretty cool games coming out of that region. And that's something to be excited about. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at my number 1. But before we conclude this, I just want to thank you for watching this video. Please hit the subscribe button if you feel like it. Otherwise, just keep coming back, and eventually I am going to get you. Truth is, picking a number one has actually not been that easy. The obvious choice was Grand Theft Auto 6, but then Rockstar announced that the game was actually not going to release till 2025. So I had to make a pivot. And the next logical pivot was actually Ubisoft, because the truth is, Ubisoft is not doing so well right now. Even their current game, Avatar, is getting mixed reviews. But then the Game Awards happened, and then Ubisoft did two really cool things that I think should be able to help them bounce back. So my number one game from the company that I believe needs to make the biggest splash in 2024 will actually be Skull and Bones. Yes, I know. Again, you're probably surprised by this, but again, let's look at the facts. Ubisoft needs a splash, and this is the game that has given them the most trouble for a long time because it's been in the development hell for way too long. And yes, there is another game that Ubisoft is making that I'm actually pretty excited about, and that is a Star Wars game. But that aside, Ubisoft needs Skull and Bones to land, and to land well, because Skull and Bones is the epitome of the things that everybody thinks is wrong with Ubisoft. That is, they'll take on projects far too ambitious and they will not see that project through. So the fact that Skull and Bones has been in development hell for such a long time just reminds gamers that yes, this is just kind of who Ubisoft is now. Beyond Good and Evil is still a game that Ubisoft keeps telling people exists, but really at this point, nobody believes it anymore. As a matter of fact, when Skull and Bones released, it was just revealed, I bet most people were thinking the same thing that I was thinking. That is, yeah, okay, really, this time, is it really coming out? And this is the problem with Ubisoft. They just need to rebuild our trust and actually make us believe that they will go back to making great games and releasing those games when they said they will. So again, you might be disappointed, but if you are, just let me know what your list of most important games are, and please do make sure to give some kind of reason why, and I will gladly respond to it. As always, thank you for watching this. Have a wonderful night.